Deputy Roisin Shortall for the Social Democrats.
Taoiseach, there were two stories over the weekend which really typify everything that's wrong with your government's approach to housing. The Mail on Sunday reported that state lender Home Building Finance Ireland has entirely financed the construction of 211 apartments in Clonsilla. It hasn't financed homes that would be owned by the state or apartments that would be leased on a cost rental basis. These are apartments that have been block bought by one of the biggest and wealthiest institutional landlords in the country, RBO. The state is entirely financing this deal. But the ultimate beneficiary will be an investment fund charging sky-high rents for these apartments when they are completed. Meanwhile, the Business Post has reported on an extraordinary intervention by another investment fund in North County Dublin. It is hoovering up starter homes in Castleview in Swords. Typically, these homes sell for between 200,000 and 350,000. Earlier this year, a three-bed end-of-terrace home sold for a gigantic €1.7 million. Another home on the estate went for a huge €850,000. On just one day in April, this fund, IQEV, bought 9 homes in Castleview. Prices for 7 of these homes didn't reach the dizzying heights of the €1.7 million, but they were all sold for a premium of between $20,000 and $88,000 over the median market price. Taoiseach, last year you told the Dáil, and I quote, "The government does not believe that funds should be competing with owner-occupiers or first-time buyers in buying up houses that have already been built." Are you standing over that statement today, Taoiseach? Because for a first-time buyer eager to buy a home in Castleview earlier this year who missed out, your commitment to prioritise first-time buyers will ring hollow indeed. Despite your assurance that investment funds would not compete with first-time buyers, it is clear that they continue to do so, and they're having a hugely distorting effect on the market. How are first-time buyers or any ordinary buyer supposed to compete with a fund that can pay such a premium for three-bed terraced homes? Why are the funds willing to spend so much, Taoiseach? The reason is that the state is entering into long-term lease agreements for these homes that will see these investments, enormous as they are, handsomely repaid over 25 years. So, Taoiseach, my questions are, will you apologise for misleading this House when you said investment funds should not compete for homes with first-time buyers? Will you give a commitment that state funds will not be used to bankroll developments for investment funds? And finally, will you act to stop investment funds snapping up homes, family homes, that are desperately needed by first-time buyers and owner-occupiers?
Thank the Deputy for raising these two issues, and I think the weakness in your presentation and distortion in your presentation is your use of the word that this typifies the government's response, these two individual cases that you've identified. But they do not typify the government's response at all, and you should know that well. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that the state itself is building, and through the approved social housing bodies, providing thousands and thousands of social homes, affordable homes, as an overall proportion of the number of houses that are built. So in 2021, non-household entities purchased 11,600 units, or 20% of the total units purchased, down from 22% in 2013 and 2019. Now, this includes the state, by the way. When I say non-household, that 20% includes the state, it includes approved housing bodies and private companies. The state accounts for the largest single share of purchases within the non-household category, with 32% of purchases by non-households. And so the institutional purchasers, and this involves all units in terms of apartments, would have purchased just 9% of total units sold last year. And then, as I said earlier, first-time buyers accounted for 26% of all properties purchased in 2021. And as I said earlier, more first-time buyers bought their first home in the last 12 months than in any year since 2008. And the state purchases are largely concentrated on houses, with 66% of state purchases being houses. And in relation to the Home Building Finance Ireland, you do recall during COVID, as a direct response to the initial impact of COVID-19, that HBFI launched a time-bound initiative, the Momentum Fund, to allow it to provide finance for larger prime residential projects that were experiencing difficulties at that time in accessing finance. And this is an agile time-bound response, which is in keeping with HBFI's mandate. It was a step-in initiative, and the end date for the Momentum Fund approvals was the 31st of December 2021. So it doesn't typify, but it was a response that they took at the time to try and make sure supply continued and that projects got finished. The only way we can resolve and make inroads into the housing issue is by supply. In respect of again the article in the Business Post, my understanding that's a fund bought from a fund. Well, not competing with first-time buyers in that case. That where the units are, and the point there being that where units are already assigned to social housing with leases of 25 years, at the time of a sale, these properties are required to remain in social housing for the entirety of their lease. Therefore, any subsequent sale of those properties would not be in competition with purchasers seeking a home, nor does it increase the cost to the state of leasing the units.
Taoiseach, when this phenomenon was brought to your attention a couple of years ago, you seemed to be completely unaware of it. And then, belatedly, your government moved to stop the practice of funds buying up homes and put a limit on them. But it's quite clear that that is still continuing to happen. Now, you also, look, it's continuing to happen in relation to houses, but in relation to apartments, what's happening is that the state is actually on both sides of this. A thing you said shouldn't be happening, where the Housing Finance Agency is providing funding for bankrolling developers in providing apartment developments, and then in turn the state is taking out long-term leases. This is the most expensive way of providing housing. And you said it was going to end. You said we were going to enter a new period. And yet, just in July, you established a fund of €450 million for the purpose of long-term leases. Now, in Dublin, it is impossible for first-time buyers to buy a new home. It is impossible for them to buy a house, obviously, because of prices. And also then, in relation to apartments, there are no apartments for sale. So this is having a hugely distorting impact on the housing market. Taoiseach, you need to act. You need to honour the commitment that you gave to first-time buyers.
It isn't actually having a hugely distortive impact. The problem is we're not building enough houses or apartments, full stop. The state, look, if you look at the figures and be honest about it for once and not continually distort the debate about housing, it gets distorted as if the only players were institutional providers. They are not. They're minority players in the overall scheme of things in terms of the construction of houses. The state is the biggest actor through social housing, through affordable housing, through a variety of financial mechanisms. The state, because right across the board, the state is building the houses or contributing to affordability. No, we're not building enough houses. And what I've noticed over the last 2 years, that the line of attack has been to pick up one particular example or one illustration and endeavour to make it the norm in your narrative, in your presentation of how the housing situation is. And it's not that at all. We need to be building 35 to 40,000 houses, in my view, at this stage. Population is going over 5 million. It's increasing. Over 70,000 people came into the country this year, with people returning and people coming into work. We need more houses of all types. So the attempts to exclude some actually will not help the overall effort. But they're not, you know there's a limit on what they can do now.
Thank you. We're moving on to the next question.